Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, 3 Ways a Green Glassware Washer Saves You Time and Money. I am Michelle Ashton of LabRoots, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. Today's educational web seminar is presented by LabRoots and brought to you by Labconco. To learn more about our sponsor, please visit www.labconco.com. Now let's get started. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that this event is interactive. We encourage you to participate by submitting as many questions as you want at any time you want during the presentation. To do so, simply type them into the Ask a Question box and click Send. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. If you have trouble seeing or hearing the presentation, click on the Support tab found at the top right of the presentation window, or report your problem by clicking on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. This presentation is educational and thus offers continuing education credits. Please click on the Continuing Education Credits tab located on the top right of the presentation window and follow the process to obtain your credits. I now present today's speaker, Taylor Jennings, the Product Manager at Labconco Corporation. For the complete bio on our speaker, please visit the Biography tab at the top of your screen. Taylor, you may now begin your presentation.
Thank you for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Jennings, and I am a product manager of Labconco, and specifically, I'm a product manager of glassware washing. And I want to take a little bit of your time today to try to talk to you about how you could be saving some time and money by using a glassware washer. So for starters, what do I mean by a glassware washer? So the easiest way I can think of to explain this to you is to think of a dishwasher, but as you would have at home, but more robust. These dishwashers are more robust in that they provide flexibility, durability, and maximum cleanability that your lab may need. In more details, the flexibility actually comes into the different sizes, configurations, and accessories that make this unit flexible and more available to all different kind of needs that you would see in your laboratory. It's very durable because it's constructed of stainless steel as well as other materials that withstand harsh chemicals and other hazards you may see in your lab. And the maximum cleanability is, simply put, these units are very, very powerful. They can get very, very hot, up to 199 degrees Fahrenheit. They include purified water rinses. They can generate steam, as well as many other features that are built to help clean and dry all glassware that you will see in your lab and you will use in your research. Now, I started off by saying this was a more robust dishwasher, but I want to clarify that it is not a dishwasher. The difference between a home dishwasher and a glassware washer is simply because the construction of the unit. Because this unit is constructed in a way, it can withstand much higher heats. It can withstand the laboratory chemicals that you will see. It also is built to intake purified water, whereas your home dishwasher can only take the tap water. It also has dual pumps. And what I mean by this is that your washer at home has a single pump. That pump pulls in the water, washes all of your dishes, and that same pump pulls the water out. Whereas in a glassware washer, there's 2 pumps, one to pull in the water and one to expel the water. This way, you don't have cross-contamination. So who would need these? Obviously, we talked about you would need it if you're in a laboratory, but more specifically, if you have glassware that you're going to reuse, if you're paying someone, whether it's a lab tech, a student, an intern, to wash these glassware, or if you are somebody that has standard operating procedures, or you need to validate the cleanliness of your lab, or you are a GMP lab, you're currently using a home dishwasher, or even if you're just trying to save some money or trying to be eco-friendly or save some water, this is the type of unit that you kind of want to look into for your lab. So let's get into a little bit more of the details of the actual what makes this unit green and what actually saves you money. What is the value proposition of this product, of this type of product? First off is the water conservation. So a basic study you can kind of Google if you have time is that the average faucet you would see in your lab uses about 2 to 3 gallons per minute when it's running. And so if in a standard lab washing environment, usually you can kind of argue that a student, intern, your lab assistant, whoever you're using, will take about 30 seconds to lather up a piece of glassware in soap, rinse it out, and put it on a drying tray. So if you do the math for that, that comes up to about, if you're using about 30 pieces of glassware a day, that comes up to about 34 gallons of water used in a day. And you can expand that to a whole year, whereas you can see in my chart, we can get up to about 8,500 gallons of water in a year. Now, in a glassware washer, it's a lot less. Glassware washer uses about 3 to 4 gallons of water per fill. And what I mean by per fill is every time the washer is filling up to run a rinse cycle or a wash cycle, that's considered a fill. So for sake of argument, let's say you decided to do about 2 rinses and two wash cycles. So you can kind of get up to about, say, 11 gallons of water a day. That's typical, but at the same time, you could also do a lot less. So you could do 1 rinse cycle, 1 wash cycle, and have half this. But for sake of argument, let's say 2 wash cycles and 2 rinse cycles. So in this scenario, you're using 11 gallons of water a day. And expand it out again to a year, you're using about a fourth of what you would be using by hand. This doesn't even include the fact that in the first example, you had somebody working and washing 30 pieces of glassware, whereas in the glassware washer, you could be washing hundreds of test tubes at one time. Let's expand this a little bit further. So, same example as before, but in this case, let's talk about the person you have working there. So, if you, typically speaking, I won't even say typically speaking, this was me 15, 20 years ago. You're getting paid minimum wage, let's say $7.25 an hour, and you're doing that same example, 30 pieces of glassware, 30 seconds at a time. So 15 minutes of your day you're spending washing glassware. You work out all the math, by the end of the year, your lab is spending $450 on this one employee just washing glassware. Now, that doesn't include any of the other lost costs that you have, moving this student into another project. If the student breaks the glassware, this doesn't include drying. There's a lot of factors. This is strictly just the fact that you're spending $450 a year on just having a student wash glassware. If you have a more specific way to look at this, we have a link on our website. I actually have it here, and we'll be willing to provide it to you after this presentation. But you can go in there and you can input some more specific details of your situation. This was more of a specific situation to me, but maybe you have somebody who makes less money, more money. Maybe your cost of water is different. Maybe you have a protocol in your lab that you're hand washing and you require your person to wash it for a minute at a time. Whatever it may be, you can go to this website and get some information and kind of get an idea of how much money you're spending a year, both on water and on employee costs, on just hand washing your glassware. Some other things that you'll notice is that the way these units are built, kind of go back to how it's built, they are aluminum back insulated and fiberglass blanket surrounds this washer. And that is the most notable or the most common way you see this is that helps it to sound a lot quieter, but also it helps retain the heat inside the washer. So going back to when I said this washer can get up to 199 degrees Fahrenheit, well, if you're running multiple rinse and wash cycles and you want to maintain that temperature, it takes a lot of energy to heat a washer up to get to that temperature. Whereas in a glassware washer, they're built in a way where they're not losing that much heat. So when the old water drains out and new water comes in, you're keeping some of that heat and some of that energy in order to reduce the time you need to heat up your water. Another thing is that these glassware washers are all-in-one washer and dryer products. And kind of going back to our example we were talking about a minute ago, if you are just hand washing it, you usually have a rack you're going to dry your glassware with. Or if you have some kind of mechanism you're using in your lab to wash products, maybe you have something specific for your test tube, something specific for beakers, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas a glassware washer is actually built to accept any kind of glassware you'll see, whether it's volumetric pipettes, test tubes, beakers, volumetric flasks, etc. And at the same time, it also dries. So these units are built as like an under-counter unit, similar to what you would have at home, and it's an all-in-one unit in that you are saving both your space requirement and the operator needs in your lab. Another feature these units tend to have is what's called a delayed start. So they're programmable, and you can program the units to start at a certain time, whereas energy is considered not peak hours. What I mean by that is you can set the unit and say, hey, I want it to run 6 hours from now when I'm home. Run. Now, some of y'all probably be like, oh, that's really no use to me, but some of y'all maybe can kind of see a reason for this. I'll give you an example. You've probably been wondering since we started this conversation where my accent comes from. Well, I'm from Texas. And in Texas, during the summer, we actually have a energy program with a lot of different power companies where any energy used from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is free. Anything from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. tends to be a little bit more expensive than normal. But 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is free. So my wife used to hate me when we lived out there because I had a tendency to never turn the AC on until I got home for the day. And in that scenario, that's something that this kind of a product would apply to me, because if I was setting up my washer to wash my product or wash my glassware from the day's work, I would definitely set it at the end of the day as I was walking out the door, because that's free energy for me. Lastly, about being green, we'll talk about is that if your lab is trying to be LEED accredited, our Labconco's actual glassware washers are mentioned in the LEED accreditation papers. So if your lab is trying to be LEED accredited, if you use one of our glassware washers, that is worth a single point towards your accreditation, and it's written right in their rules of law. So I've been kind of talking generically about glassware washing in general, but I would like to take a little bit of time and just kind of show y'all what some standard features and what's more specific towards my glassware washers. So if you have any more questions specifically about my product, I can kind of tell it to you. So kind of how we discussed at the very beginning, these products are built with stainless steel, interior and exterior. Specifically, we use type 304. That's kind of a standard in certain labs. We talked about the dual pumps, but other things that we need to mention here is that the multiple electrical configurations. So in North America, you have your standard 115 or 208. Internationally, you have 230, and then when we get to the frequency levels and amperage levels, there's a lot of other requirements as well. All of those requirements we can do. We have all availability, 208, 230 volts, single phase, 115 volt, 50-60 hertz. These units, as I've discussed before, get up to 199 degrees Fahrenheit. That is actually exclusive to your 208, 230 volt units. Our 115 volt units will get up to about 180. Drying temperatures are a little bit less. It's more to about the 150 to 160 range, depending on what your unit you're using. We do offer both under-counter and freestanding units. So under-counter, once again, think of what you got at home. It's just literally a washer we put under the counter. A freestanding unit is the exact same product. The difference is I'll add stainless steel sides and back panels to it. That way, if you wanted to put it out and say in the corner of your lab or out more in the open, it's not much of an eyesore. It looks nice. As well, if you're doing that kind of option, we have something called a mobile option where you can add feet to it, as well as different aspects. That way, you can kind of move it to different labs if you have a need for something like that. With all glassware washers, accessories, parts, and the actual products themselves, when it comes to Labconco, there's a 2-year warranty on all of it. So anything breaks or anything needs replacing, we take care of it. No questions asked. And we're located in Kansas City. Everything is made here. They're fully programmable. So the standard washers, our washers, come with 10 preset factory programs and 2 custom programs. So what that means is we have 10 programs that we have tested, and for one reason or another, maybe it's a glass-only cycle or a plastics-only cycle. These units can be used for plasticware as well. But we have 10 programs that are preset for what we have tested to work. Now, these programs are slightly adjustable to whatever your needs may be. At the same time, we have 2 custom user set programs. Those are completely up to you. You develop them how you want them. And what I mean by how you develop them is that you have up to 2 washes, and you can determine the time and temperature of those washes. You have up to 6 rinses. Again, time and temperature of the rinses, as well as what kind of water you're feeding into your rinse cycles, whether that's your tap water or your purified water. You can also program your dry time. You can have no dry at all, or you can have a dry time all the way up to 250 minutes. Temperatures, again, you can have from room temperature air as well as all the way up to about 150, 160 degrees Fahrenheit. The 2 main products that we have, I want to bring out, we have what's called the SteamScrubber and the FlaskScrubber. The SteamScrubber is your standard washer. It's similar to, once again, similar to what you have at home. It comes with 2 open racks, and the open racks are open because they're designed for you to add accessories to it to be flexible to what you're trying to work with in your lab. In other words, if you're washing a bunch of different things, say beakers, utensils, pots and pans, et cetera, you can use one of these racks because there's different ways you can kind of customize it to your needs. The FlaskScrubber is a little bit different. It's a very similar unit. The difference is instead of the 2 open racks, it just has a lower spindle rack. Now the spindle rack, as you can kind of see in the picture on the screen, it has it has 36 spindles. The spindles are these little posts that have this glassware holder. And what it is it's designed for narrow neck glassware. Specifically, it's designed to wash, rinse, and dry the inside of a narrow neck, say, Erlenmeyer flask or a volumetric beaker, something really skinny. Test tubes as well. But these units come with 36 spindles built on the lower spindle rack. You can add an upper spindle rack as well as you can add upper rack, an upper open basket to this as well. And the good news is both, as our racks are completely interchangeable, so if you have one or the other, whether it's a SteamScrubber or FlaskScrubber, and over time you decide you wanted the other kind of rack, no problem at all. They install and are removed and installed quite easily. We also offer what we call our 33 lines, the same product line. The difference is that it is designed for ADA compliant, American Disabilities Association compliance. So if you need to have, if your casework in your lab, it's built in a way where your washers need to be up to 33 inches or shorter, we have the exact same product. It's the same thing as before. We just make them that certain height. As well as if you're in a lab that has a lot of validation requirements, I would recommend you look into what's called our Vantage. Our Vantage is essentially a flash scrubber with all the bells and whistles. So a detergent dispenser, how it normally works is, once again, similar to what you have at home in that there's a detergent cup, whereas the Vantage is actually an automatic dispenser. It connects directly to your bottle of detergent, and you program on the washer how much detergent you want to use each cycle. As well as your neutralizing acid. Some people get confused. Neutralizing acid is similar to your jet dry you would use at home. As well as this unit does come with a few other features such as a water conductivity sensor. That way you can kind of tell how clean your water is. An RS-232 port. That way you can output your data from your wash cycles to a computer, a printer, or whatever you may need. As well as a HEPA filter built into the airline. That way when you're getting the drying air is actually HEPA filtered free for this. Detergents, we get asked a lot of questions a lot by what kind of detergents we use. So we do offer our own detergents. We call them Lab Solutions, but you do not have to use my detergent. So our detergents and other detergents, the only thing I recommend is that you get a detergent that is non-foaming or low foaming. And the good news is most of these detergents that will actually say laboratory washing detergent. So get a laboratory washing detergent that's non-foaming, low foaming, and you'll be good. Our acid is, once again, it's very similar to a jet dry. It's not made for an actual acid wash. What it is actually designed to attract to the detergent particles. That way it's rinsed out a little bit easier. And briefly, as I've said, with different racks and whatnot, we have accessories you can customize your washer. More specifically, our units are flexible to whatever your need may be. So if you're washing a lot of test tubes, we have several different designs for test tubes. You're washing Erlenmeyer flasks, whether it's volumetric pipettes, beakers, utensils, BOD bottles, Petri dishes. We have different customizations and different accessories that you can purchase that you can add to your washer for your needs. But as always, if you have anything out of the ordinary, we highly recommend you call us and ask us any questions you may have. Sometimes customers call and we'll ask something they feel is a little bit out of the ordinary, and usually we have a solution for them. We're always happy to help. But at this time, I'm going to take a little break and allow y'all to ask any questions you guys may have. And I appreciate everybody who came to this webinar, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Taylor, for your informative presentation. We will now start the live Q&A portion of the webinar. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please do so now. Just click on the Ask a Question box located on the far left of your screen. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for. Now let's get started. Our first question is, how much water does a washer use?
So typically in our washers, it's roughly about 13 liters a cycle. And by cycle, again, that means if you're doing one wash and one rinse cycle, that's 26 liters of water.
Thank you. All right, what is the best rack or accessories to use if I am washing test tubes?
So you have a couple options here. So if you're primarily washing test tubes, we have what's called our test tube spindle rack. It is very similar to a spindle rack you would see on a standard flask scrubber, but what it is it has a lot of smaller spindles and holders specifically for test tube sizes. So depending on your size, you could wash a couple hundred of test tubes at one time. We do have some other options if you have a little bit larger test tubes, a lot wider mouth test tubes where you're not so concerned about trying to get inside the test tube itself. And those are just simple holders that we can put both on spindle racks and standard racks depending on what you need.
Thank you. How hot does my inlet tap water need to be?
My recommendation is you do about 60 C. And really for anybody, as long as you you connect it to your hot water tap, and you have it actually coming in as hot as you possibly can. The washer has built-in heaters, so it's going to heat up the water to whatever you want it to be. But keep in mind that takes time. So the hotter the water is coming in, the better. It's usually why I kind of say around 60 C.
Thank you. How can we wash large glassware like 5 to 10 liter volume capacity? Beaker, conical flask, etc.?
So you have a couple options. So in under-counter models, you can take out a top rack and use only the lower rack. Specifically in our unit, there's about 19.5 inches of space in there. And that's kind of roughly around 19 to 20 inches is usually what you have in an under-counter unit. So if I remember correctly, a 10-liter beaker I think is about 14. So you can wash, as long as you take a top rack out, you can wash with a lower rack. That can be a lower standard rack or a spindle rack, and you would still have the very top rotating arm to cover the outside of the unit as well. They do also make much larger units. So if you are doing hundreds of 10-liter beakers at a time, they're much an industrial size washer or a large capacity washer might be more of use for you, just because they'll have a little bit more space.
Great, thank you. What is the normal drying temperature of washed glassware?
So twofold answer, kind of. So typically speaking, if you're talking about just drying it in the laboratory, you're usually just putting it on a rack and let it air dry. As for a glassware washer, similar to how you do with your wash programs or water programs, it is programmable. My unit specifically is anywhere between 38C to 70C. You don't really want to go much higher, because with glassware, glass obviously will get hot and hold its heat a lot longer, making it a little bit more of an annoyance for the user when they're taking the glass out. And if you're washing plasticware, you don't really want it to get much hotter than that, because you're going to damage your plasticware.
Great, thank you. And let's see, the next one is, how can we be sure that the glassware is completely clean?
So this is another twofold answer. We do a lot of tests and studies on cleanability, as well as inhibitory residue studies here. Those studies they're provided on our website, or you can contact me and I can get them to you. As well as the definition of clean is kind of dependent on you in a way, in that when we talk about using these kind of units for validation purposes or a GMP lab or anything like that, you have some kind of standard in your lab of what you define as clean. Then you're going to have to figure out what settings you're going to need for a washer to get to that point. My recommendation when somebody comes to me and doesn't know how to get to that point is use a max cycle on the washer. There's one already provided for you. It's the Intense Plus cycle, and that kind of guarantees that you run that program, your glassware will get clean. You'll see that you'll get clean, and then you can kind of back from there. In other words, you can use a few less rinses, lower your temperature, until you get to a happy medium where you're not using as much energy and water, and then you're also getting your desired results.
Thank you. All right, the next one is, how do you clean narrow tub pipettes automatically?
So we have a few different ways for pipettes. When it comes to the glassware washers, there is actually accessories you can attach to spindle racks, where you can put pipettes on the spindle racks directly in a way, and they'll hold them in place and then wash and clean them out just like you would with any kind of other narrow-necked glassware. For my unit, this accessory can do a max of about 16 pipettes at once. Again, you do have some height requirements. This accessory can be bent at a 45-degree angle to kind of help with that height requirement, but there is obviously a restriction there. I didn't cover in this presentation, but we also do sell a pipette automatic washer that can wash up to 64 pipettes. And it does the same kind of technology as you would see in a standard flask scrubber, in that it percolates the water and detergent going inside the actual pipette, washing it and rinsing it out interiorly, and then spraying it out exteriorly, to that way you can wash both internal and external, as well as drying. And I can give you more information on that if you want. I'll give you all my contact information. after this presentation.
Thank you. All right, the next question is, this is a two-part question. What kind of water do you recommend for rinses? I've heard that if it's too pure, it can damage the washer. And does it depend on the stainless steel quality?
That's actually correct. So you do not want to do ultra pure or type 1 water in a washer because it is stainless steel. So basic water chemistry for you guys. When you use an ultra pure water, there's nothing in the water that theoretically there's nothing in the water that conducts electricity. So the polarity of water swaps, and instead it tries to take in actual particles. So when you put it on stainless steel, you end up actually etching the stainless steel because the water essentially eats it. So when we say purified rinses, we usually say type 3 or RO water. That's usually more than pure enough for what you're trying to do, and you won't see any problems with stainless steel and RO water.
Great. All right, what conductivity is recommended? What is the limit?
So this is kind of similar to the cleanability question in that it is kind of dependent on you. There's not really a limit in this case. However, if you do have your tap water is very, very hard coming in, I do recommend you get a water softener. I do recommend you do get a water softener, and they're readily available, pretty cheap. You can get one at your local hardware store and attach it directly to your line. At the same time, if you do have hard water, you're probably better off with your rinse cycles using a little bit more purified water. But there's not really a limit in terms of these units in terms of conductivity. If you do have a conductivity sensor on the washer, it will show you what the conductivity of the water is coming in and out, just to kind of give you a sense of what you're washing your glassware with, essentially. But there is no limit to what it can and can't use.
All right, it looks like we have time for one more question. On the mobile models, how would the water drain?
So a mobile kit actually comes with a drain pipe that connects directly to your sink. So that is actually primarily the main thing that people will do is they'll take that drain pipe and connect it directly to their sink drain, so it'll just drain with that the sink water.
Thank you, Taylor. Do you have any final comments for our audience?
I just want to thank you all for your time, and thank you for listening to me today. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact me. We at Labconco are always here to help, and we enjoy hearing some of your research and stories. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you again, Taylor, for your time today and your important research. We would also like to thank LabRoots and our sponsor, Labconco, for underwriting today's educational webcast. Before we go, I'd like to thank the audience for joining us today and for their interesting questions. Questions we did not have time today and those submitted during the on-demand period will be addressed by the speaker via the contact information you provided at the time of registration. LabRoots will alert you via email when it's available for replay. We encourage you to share that email with your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. Until next time, goodbye.